Commissioner, do you want to do
Casey.
this?
No.
All right. I mean, it's good if you stand up. We're going to stand up anyway, right? All right, we will call the order of this meeting of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal and informal session for September 17th of 2020, and we'll begin with the flag salute. And Commissioner Wilson, can you lead us? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner. And welcome back. It's good to have you.
Mr. Chair, before we begin.
Yes, thank you.
No.
We'll move on to public comment. And last week we said some things. So, Commissioner.
Oh, I just want to ask if we could all just maybe just a blessing on our firefighters. Those are on the front lines. We even have one of our county employees, Joe Moore, who's facilities manager, who's chosen to go down and fight one of the bigger fires. We know we've got people all over the state and locally, and all those, and our law enforcement officers who are certainly in a very difficult, precarious place. We've got a lot of gratitude for our county employees that have just been showing up and have been here a lot of long nights, and really very much appreciation for our administrator who's really never left his post, our emergency manager and our fair manager. I want to thank our county council. Has been here trying to help us navigate through this. Carrie and Carolina got us through this. And I just want to thank everybody who isn't mentioned, who's been showing up to do work that nobody sees.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And if you would be willing, I would also love to have us recognize the lives that have been lost in these fires with just a moment of silence, if you would.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And since we're on that
Oh,
note,
yes. Yeah,
I'd
I'm
also
sorry.
like to take a moment and thank all of our, in the county, all of our local manufacturing companies and our merchants and our restaurateurs and everybody who supplied needs to those that really need and supplied that information, because that's what community is all about. And I think we've had excellent participation from the community.
Yes, we have. Thank you.
Yes, and for those, so a moment of silence if we could, for those whose lives have been lost, but also for their families and the people that we don't know about yet.
Right.
All right. All right, thank you, commissioners. And while we're on item C, which is public comment, I did not see any public comment come in, Carolina. Okay, thank you. But due to COVID-19 and physical distancing requirements, anyone wishing to submit general public comment or comments related to specific agenda items may do so in written format by email at bocinfo@co.yamhill.or.us or by mail at 535 Northeast 5th Street in McMinnville, Oregon, 97128. Any comments received prior to the meeting will be shared with the Board of Commissioners and submitted to the record. All right, thank you very much. And thank you. We have counties all around us here that need help ongoing. And while it's good that FEMA is here amidst us right now, they'll still need all of our help.
Yes.
Move on to item D, which is our work session, and we have none today. Yes.
If I may.
I was going to ask you how some of these things fit in. So
We don't have a work session, but in light of recent events and everything that's been happening, we have Gary from the fairgrounds and Brian from emergency management here, and I thought, the board would be interested in getting an update, a brief update. So if the board is okay, that we use the time and go ahead and do the updates.
that sounds good to me, commissioners. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Then I will give up my seat.
Do you want to, Brian, on behalf of emergency management, would you like to come and give us an update? You have been updating us very, very consistently, but this is a good opportunity to have a recap and also for the public. So thank you.
Yes. Can I remove this while I speak?
Please do.
Okay. Thank you. You sure you don't want to go, Gary? No, you're just kidding.
He was really fast on that one.
Right? Exactly. So, thank you for allowing me to come here today. Much of what I'm going to talk about is real kind of high level, how we got to where we're at today, and kind of the status moving forward. Some of those things that we, some considerations that we're making as we progress. So, you can stop me at any point and tell me, hey, you already know this information as I run through the fire side of things into the notification period and what we did to spool things up. So I learned, and I can't recall how, I think it might have been social media, that sometime overnight a brush rig was sent from Yamhill County to assist on the power line fire outside of Hag Lake. So we didn't really have any optics on that. That was a Forest Grove Fire and Rescue commanded event. And obviously when you're dealing with a couple of different jurisdictions, it's a little difficult at times to kind of get some of the optics on the ground. So we were able to get Sergeant Elliott from the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office to that scene Tuesday to get into the command post and get us in emergency management a visual, if you will, on what command was looking at regarding that fire. We had no optics at the time of its movement other than the general direction of the prevailing winds, and it was a windy event that day. So he was able to relay to us that they were requesting a level 1 evacuation zone in the northwest part of the county, Mount Richmond Road to Ford Road, that kind of northwest area just west of Gaston. We were able to craft a message in our emergency notification system. There were a smattering of folks in that system at the time. And so we were able to get detectives and search and rescue crews to go up there and do a door-to-door for level 1 evacuation information only. If you're not familiar with the evacuations, it's a ready, set, go type thing. Level 1 is just be ready. More information could be forthcoming, and you may need to leave. As we were leaving that briefing at the Emergency Operations Center, giving the assignments on where the teams were going to go and what roads they were going to hit and how they don't duplicate effort and streamline it, we got word via radio from a Washington County deputy on a frequency that was shared with the radio upgrade or the radio system that the sheriff's office now has the ability to share information with them, a common frequency. We were able to get word that they were requesting a level 3 evacuation at Jakewith and Weaver Lane or Weaver Road. This is in Washington County, so not one that I'm really familiar with since it's outside of the county. Again, we had no optics at this time on that there was even a fire in that area. This was a TVFNR effort out of Washington County. So we got the call later on. We got information that at, I think it was 5:19 is when that fire was dispatched to TVFNR crews, and within 10 minutes, I want to say 6 minutes, they had sent a request out to get some local resources in a fire tender or a water tender or a brush rig, one of the two, I apologize, to head up there to help. So they were able to communicate very well on the fire side of things. And quite honestly, fire folks were a little busy at that time. So completely understandable. One of our teams for the level 1 evacuation diverted up to the Chehalem Mountain area to assist with those level 3 evacuations. And they were kind of learning as they go because we didn't have assignments to actually send them to. So it's go forth and conquer. Please check in with us and let us know you're okay and some of the things that you've done. Sergeant Bob Eubanks was one of those, and he gave briefings periodically on fire movement and where they had been as the scene or the incident progressed. At 7:30 in the evening, I got an email from Washington County Emergency Manager stating that they were getting word that there was a fire up there and wanted to know if I knew about it. And of course I did, and I explained it and how we knew about that already. unbeknownst to me, we had made the phone call to the fairgrounds, the Yamhill County Fairgrounds, Gary, thank you, that we were looking at the potential of evacuees coming from that area on Bald Peak, Mountaintop, Jakewith Road, that were being evacuated with livestock. So we reached out to the fairgrounds to let them know and ask them if they would mind spinning up, if you will, kind of a livestock evacuee center. And the unbeknownst to me part was that through the Coconut Telegraph or whatever, they already knew and were already taking critters in. So thank you for that. As the incident expanded, we called in our volunteers. We've had a myriad of CERT, Volunteer Response Unit, or VRU, cadets, search and rescue. I want to say a CERT team for one shift from Independence or West Salem. I apologize for if anybody here and I miss anybody on that. We had them respond, and they left their works in their homes to work road closures in very smoky conditions near the fire to keep the fire crews safe, keep cars and looky-loos out of that area. So it was pretty good of them to step up in the time of need and volunteer their hours. Right now, we're looking at a quick compilation of the hours is 1,230 volunteer hours as it stands right now, and a cost savings to the county of $31,482 in that volunteerism. So kudos to our volunteer groups. We set up a temporary, as it progressed into the early evening, we had set up a temporary evacuation point at Newburgh High School. We worked with the Newburgh High School. Larry Hampton is their facilities manager there, and he was great to work with. And thank you. A shout out to Newburgh High School or Newburgh School District for allowing that to go. What a great partnership to have. We set up that temporary evacuation point for folks to go and get information regarding the evacuated areas. Fortunate for us, it wasn't heavily used because folks in that area that were evacuated had other places to go to, and a lot of them with their animals probably were at the fairgrounds or folks or friends or family outside of the area. So we did get some people in that area and were able to direct them to Northwest Christian Church in Newburgh that volunteered to step up as a comfort station, a place where they could go to get inside amenities, restrooms, washing up, things like that, and food. So a huge shout out there. So as we progressed even further, it was kind of interesting to learn that there were all these behind the scenes conversations going on about where people could go regarding evacuations, because as you're well aware, at this time, the Santiam fire, then the Beachy Creek fire was up and running and on its devastating path through the Santiam Canyon. And we also had the Riverside fire to contend with in Clackamas County. Much of those evacuees went north and south of us, but we still had to bring some of those folks in. So that behind the scenes conversations that were going on were places where RVs could park in the county to be a temporary respite, if you will, from the affected areas. So we started getting reports probably around 8 o'clock at night. I'm trying to not do the 24-hour time, so I apologize to do the quick math. Around 8 o'clock at night, started to get the reports of evacuation orders coming in that were not part of any evacuation orders that we put out. For lack of better terms, bleed over or kind of maybe they forgot they signed up for something in the Canby area. I'm not saying that's what happened, but we're looking into those things because we were fielding calls in the EOC about those evacuations. I should back up a little bit and say that the emergency notification was utilized for the Powerline Fire Level 1 evacuation. It was also used for the level 3 evacuation on the Chehalem Mountain Bald Peak fire on that initial evacuation push. And it was all utilized for all subsequent updates, downgrades, things like that. So it was a pretty good system. I will take the minute to share that this system was approved by board order on June 29th, 2017. The contract was signed and pushed over, and on December 14th, we rolled out with that system, went public with it, went live with it. In fact, it was kind of interesting, little sidebar thing. We had an earthquake like 2 days before that, and you remember that? Hey, nice publicity stunt. Anyways, we were able to get some, and these are all regarding, or all documented in News Register articles. So we were able to utilize that emergency notification system. The problem that we had was there wasn't a lot of buy-in at the time. Unfortunately, I think nobody's immune from it, but it takes an event like this to really gain traction in certain areas. I'm certainly not immune to it, so this is not an accusatory statement. In 2 days, we had 14,000 people sign up.
You got buy-in.
Huge. Thank you for everybody who signed up. That's awesome. The only thing I'm going to ask, and I'm going to put it out in a message, an email to all of you people who signed up, is that if it's one person per house that signed up, anybody in that house that has a cell phone or email or contact point, they need to sign up also, because you're not always together all the time. And this incident is evident of that. So thank you.
Good clarification.
Off soapbox. So we started getting some concerning comments and communications back to us about the messaging coming out of the EOC regarding this event. First and foremost, this emergency notification system is not designed as a newsfeed type system. It never has been and never will be. We are looking at ways, and I'll talk about that in a minute, on enhancing some of those things. But we want to make sure that we do, because public information and warning is important to us. We've got some considerations that we are taking into account, and we've actually made some movement in some areas already. We hesitate making it a newsfeed type system, because we don't want to condition folks to kind of ignore or get desensitized to an actual emergency alert coming through. So we'll work on policies and procedures that address that. So some of those considerations that we've had, actually, let me go, because it's incident specific. I've got that in my considerations. One of the things that I learned this morning, as I spoke to Lacey with the fairgrounds, she did an awesome job, is all said and done, there were over 700 animals that were housed at the Yamhill County Fairgrounds. And this morning they're down to 170. So we've got people going out. There's a big arena. I don't know what you call it, company. I'm not a horse guy. So a place where a bunch of horses are. They're
Maybe a stable.
I know this is public, and they're going to go, that guy's an idiot.
I would call it a stable, but
There you go. Thank you
What
for
do I
that.
know?
There's 20 horses going back to their stable. Thank you, Commissioner.
Nice job.
Good cover on that. So we're continuing to see folks being able to return home and getting back towards normal. So going back to the considerations, keeping in mind we're a resource coordination center. We don't have an active role in the incident itself. We want to support the responding agencies with resources that they are unable to get. And also, if there's a need for sheltering and things like that, we would take the lead on that and start getting that spooled up. We rely on the on-scene command to give us the borders of evacuation zones. There were some questions and concerns about how a level 3 could be right next to a level 1 evacuation zone, and how does that work? I completely understand that question and those comments, but at this time we are basically passing along the information that the folks that are working so hard and so fast in that situation to get that information out to us. So most of our considerations that we have are communication based, whether that's internal or external. And it's just a fact of the matter. I don't think there's any after action report, which this is not. I'll just throw that caveat in there or disclaimer. Any after action report does come with a communication issue at some level. I don't think anybody's immune from that. We had difficulties getting that information early on because of the busyness of the fire. So one consideration that we're having, I briefly touched on a little bit ago, was the incident updates coming from within the EOC out to the general public. With the emergency notification system being set up the way it is, and honestly, at the time, the low buy-in or the low member count, we really didn't look at it the way that we do now. We're starting to make changes and starting to develop programs to push out non-emergent information out to folks that are signed up in this emergency notification system via email. It would be email only because it's not a text alert or anything like that. It's just a periodic update that says, hey, this is the status of this event. Here's some resources and a way to communicate with the people that you need to communicate with. So those are already starting to be crafted, and we'll move forward on that. And I look forward to being able to get that done. So we were able to also identify communications regarding updates to county and city administrators. I think it's safe to say that communication in something like this that affects, it mainly affects one end of the county, but it has side effects that run downhill or out to other communities. And I think it only fair to be able to update those county and city administrators. So we're creating a group. In fact, I sent out the first test message yesterday to Administrator Huffer on that and kind of a model on what that would look like, to be able to include messaging, that updated messaging that they can brief their folks internally on those. So more changes to come on that. So the focus, I think it's safe to say that in any messaging, we want the public to know, but our first priority is life safety. One thing that we have talked about, and I think it's going to maybe get a little more traction, or at least garner some more conversations, is the ability to update the website. That would be a good place to steer folks in the event of an event like this. We don't have the ability in emergency management to update the website right now. I'm not saying that we don't. Somebody within the organization, I mean, it's just a cumbersome for us. We don't have the ability to do that after hours like that on the fly. So look for positive changes coming in that arena. So one comment that, because I kind of went out there and I was perusing the comments, trying to get kind of an optics on what folks were talking about. And I comment on some with, hey, shout out or reach out to me and we'll work on this, work on that. One of the things was a gentleman posted how difficult it was, it was cumbersome to get to the sign-in page for the emergency notification system. That was done first thing when I got into work on Monday morning, or I think or Tuesday. I don't remember. I've been at work since Tuesday of the 8th.
Some time ago.
Yeah. So we were able to get that taken care of immediately. And so now it's a one-stop shop, one click, and you're already to the sign-in page. So to the gentleman who posted that comment, yes, they are read, and thank you for that feedback. So let's get to some positive things, I guess. Not that these are negative, because we all learn from what these incidents bring, and we make strides to do better next time. I just like to go on the record and say I hope there isn't not a next time, but that's that's out of my control. So law enforcement and fire crews were able to evacuate 200 plus homes in the area of the Chehalem fire. Not one single home was lost, and 3 barns were damaged or destroyed. I don't know the level of damage to those barns, but a barn is better than a house. It's tragic still, but still it's no loss of life and no loss of a residence. So with the amount of folks that we had at the fairgrounds and the potential needs that were going on, there were some messaging that went out early on looking for things. Through conversations with Gary and Lacey and Kelly, Kelly's the unnamed staffer that was, now she's named, she's on the record. We had a good conversation with them, and we're able to streamline some of the resource requesting or needs that were truly needed out at the fairgrounds for food, hygiene items, things like that. If there were any needs, we're able to streamline that through channels within. Hope on the Hill did a fantastic job getting stuff out there. It's just the needs that were met through that program were awesome. So thank you to them. We were able to avoid that disaster within a disaster by getting coordinated messaging out. When I say disaster within a disaster or an emergency after the emergency, we've all heard stories about donated items. People want to help. We want people to help. It just shows that beyond what we see and hear out there every day, people are good, you know, and they want to know that they're part of something bigger, and even somebody reaching out saying, hey, I've got these, I'd like to donate, and we'll take your information. Just know that is meaningful to us. So we appreciate that. So we were able to get let me go back. We all see those stories about, a good example is I believe it was a hurricane in Central America or thereabouts. And hurricane season is generally in a hot part of the year, and lo and behold, a pallet full of winter coats shows up on the tarmac. They don't need that kind of stuff. So those are things that have to be managed after the fact. We hear about extra food items that have to be thrown away afterwards because they're either expired or they're no longer good to consume. So those are all things that we're always going to have to manage. But I think the message behind that is that we are very impressed with the local outreach and the giving nature of the good folks of Yamhill County. Early on in this, we're fortunate that this did not become a sheltering event in Yamhill County. When you put the word shelter on something, it brings a different or added layers of requirements that are needed to run that. Ken Nygren, my assistant emergency manager, reached out to the Red Cross early on. Red Cross is a big partner in our sheltering. And it's not bad mouthing them in any way, shape, or form, but I'll say that they weren't available in the local area, not because they didn't want to help, but we've got neighbors to our south that are in way more need than we are. So we're happy that they weren't able to help, that they were over there helping, if that makes sense. So it gets you to think, I think, looking at that resource that we rely on in those kind of areas where we rely on expertise, to assist, it kind of gets you to think, well, what would happen in a larger regional event such as a Cascadia subduction zone? What would Yamhill County look like in comparison to the larger metropolitan areas or the larger counties with a larger population base? Not saying that we're forgotten about or that we're not important in the hierarchy of the state, for lack of better terms, but we are certainly going to have some issues or some considerations that we're going to need to make in something like that. So we have talked about, for even before this event, is the possibility of getting with churches, local churches, and doing periodic shelter training with the church leaders. Of course, this is just concept right now, but getting with those church leaders to get that shelter training so they could be that boots on the ground right after incident, and maybe bring that or alleviate some pressure of the Red Cross until they could arrive. We've also, I've been in discussions and meetings with school districts for the better part of almost 2 years, I think, that when we talk about getting a single emergency operations plan for all the school districts or most of the school districts in the county. And part of those discussions were maybe seeking grant funds to pre-position or stage shelter supplies in Connex boxes. All schools have some sort of playground type thing, type area. And I don't want to say that because I certainly don't speak for those school administrators or school officials that say, hey, we're going to take this space. It takes a partnership, and they're willing to do that. Right now, we've got 3 identified points of distribution / dispensing in the county, and I would like to certainly expand that to at least 1 school in each city in the county. I think it just makes sense when you start thinking that the island concept and what did you say when you first got here? Darby Dragons over there on the outskirts
That's right.
outskirts of Yamhill County. So inside joke for those of you who are watching.
The map doesn't have other counties.
Yeah,
so
the map
who
is
knows what's out
just
there.
Yamhill County. So one of the things that we would like to continue our push in is training to the county. And that what I mean by that is to our key staff in the county and our senior and elected officials. We had to cancel because of that pesky thing called COVID. We had to cancel that senior and elected officials class for this year. We try and bring it every 2 years for folks to come in, but it talks about the senior officials' role during disaster and emergency preparedness and considerations and things of that nature. So it's an eye opener in some places, and it's a duh in others, but it's still a good place to come together because, quite honestly, you're there with other senior and elected officials from other cities and counties. Other cities within the county. So we'll continue to do that. We also would like to see an expanded training for department heads and maybe supervisors, and it's real simple stuff. It's the ICS training, the incident command system training. There's independent study courses online that can be 2-3 hours at a time, and they get their a good understanding of what is required or kind of what happens during an event and the nature, the chain of command, the span of control, all of those considerations that come into place. There's some EOC operations classes that might be beneficial, that when you talk about some of the positions within the EOC and how we work and rely heavily on communications inside and outside. And I guess finally, I'll say that this incident can certainly highlight the relationships that that you have and any senior official would have with various groups or individuals outside of the normal meeting procedures. I think communication is key in that event, and communication with the EOC. in such an event, we could help craft answers to make sure that our messages are coordinated going forward. We can talk about resource availability and the feasibility of doing certain things. And certainly, it would allow me the opportunity to reach back to my colleagues about specific requests that they might have or specific resources that they might be able to share with us. So, so we want to ensure that you guys are protected in this process and are able to provide your constituents with the answers that they need. So look for changes coming forward. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments or?
I have a number, but I'm going to hold those because I would anticipate, do we have a timeline, Ken, on when we'll have a full after-action review? Number one, for department heads, and I would think department heads and everybody involved in EOC and even some representatives from our volunteer groups. And then also more of an after-action report on that to the board so that can wrap it up because we've gotten some really very helpful comments from the community and in a very kind way pointed out some of the deficiencies, which now everybody did such a great job, but a real full action, after action review.
And I guess where I would comment on that, and sorry, I'm yelling in your ear, Gary. I just want to make sure I'm picking up on the microphones, but and Brian can probably speak to this a little bit more, but just the fact that a lot of the situation is still active and we're in more of that recovery phase at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're always looking to improve as we go through the process. And so if there's things that we can implement or discuss or make changes now, we're going to actively work on that. But as far as once we get ready for an after action review, and right now this situation is still ongoing, and I think once we get a little bit closer to kind of seeing maybe a finish line towards a recovery, that might be the time that we circle back and schedule work sessions and get the folks together to do an after action review.
Sounds good.
And
You mind if I just add a little point or say my own piece on it?
Please.
My own addition is that from my standpoint in the EOC as the emergency manager is there's two different after action reviews. There's going to be incident specific on what we did within the EOC and our partners that we worked with at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then to your point is that broader, what are we going to do or what did we do at the county level? So we can certainly have those discussions also. And I'm willing to be part of that.
Great, thank you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'm going to hold everything until that time because there's so much.
Perfect.
I think I'll hold almost everything that time, but I do have one comment, Brian, I'm suggesting, knowing you're probably already working on it, is that we have so many volunteers that help us that come out hour after hour like in the DOC. But it seems to me that we don't have any places, somebody wants to take a nap or get away for an hour and a half where we can put them. So, coming from the fire service, we always had an area that may have 2 bunks in it or 3 bunks, small refrigerator and stuff where volunteers, and let's say if they work 2-3 hours and they're just getting overwhelmed, that they could go and get away from things, still be there, but get away from things.
Yeah, you are correct. We don't have those capabilities in our facility. Not that we couldn't spool up a cot or something like that, but yeah, I would agree. And I understand exactly what you're talking about. I did 25 hours that first day.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll save all my other questions for when we do the debrief.
And I want to observe in the good news category that I felt like Brian and Carol and Sheriff, because he was actively involved in a lot of this too, and Ken Nygren responded. I didn't expect upon being like, hey, I can't find this, or somebody said, I didn't expect, I'm going to fix that right away. I expected like, we're going to learn from that and we'll change it later. Like you put a hotline, or Carol put a hotline together last, I think Thursday while we were coming into session, and it was up, it was live. so that people had a place to go to centralize. And then you put together a second one for out of county. And I was impressed by how quickly, and I was also impressed by the fact that you had the mental space between all of you to hear an observation and take it as a like, let's do this, rather than like, oh, it's something that we're doing wrong, right? And I saw that a lot, I want to say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Ken and Carol are invaluable to emergency management. So I shout out to them and thank you for what you guys did.
Casey, I do have one more,
Yes.
have one more comment for Brian. And again, I think Brian brought it up once, and I think it's very important to realize that from an elected official position, that we have responsibilities, whether it's authorizing emergency contracts, whatever we need to do. And as elected officials, we have to make sure that we're doing our job and we're not out doing some of the hands-on, because really from an elected official standpoint, that's not really what our job. Our job is to be there to really help when somebody like Brian or anybody in that area, or even Health and Human Services come to us with a big need. That's really our responsibility. And I learned very quickly through the ICS system is that if you're doing those everyday activity things, you can't do your job either as an elected official. So.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Well, thank you for
Thank you for
lot,
that.
right?
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you for presenting at least this initial kind of update on how things started and how things went. I really appreciate it.
I know I've closed already, but I want to appreciate, I appreciate the support that the board has given us in this time. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thanks
all
for
your
being
work.
ready.
Brian.
Thanks a lot,
Right.
Brian.
Thank your staff, of course.
And I also want to note that your law enforcement experience and being a sergeant with the sheriff's office sure has been, it's been a great perspective to have in the work that you're doing. So thank you for that too.
Yeah, that's a very good point. All right, Gary, welcome. It's also very good to see you today.
Well, thank you.
Good article in the paper as well.
Huh?
Good article in the paper about the fair.
The last Tuesday, about 11 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from a lady that wanted to know if we boarded horses. I said, sure. Yeah, we board horses. We have some room. And she started crying. And I thought, well, something's wrong here. You know, we knew what was going on. And it turns out she was fleeing the fires up around Beaver Creek, up that way. She was trying to find a place. I said, just get out here. She was worried about costs. I said, just get out here and get safe, and then we'll go from there. And that's how it started. Little did I know. Little did I know. Yeah, I finally took a nap at 3:30 that morning. So it was a tremendous response. The word got out, and as Brian included, we had over 700 animals, different, everything from turtles to Percheron horses, which is just short of a Clydesdale at the fairgrounds. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. You know, we have the luxury of having a resource that most departments don't have. We have 4-H and FFA. And with 4-H and FFA, one word goes out, it's spread out throughout the whole community. And even the alumni who haven't been in 4-H for 30 years showed up. So yesterday I was kind of start putting things together in my second office behind the barns at the picnic table. We had over 409 volunteers this time. 3 times a day, taking care of the animals, and some staying, becoming security at night, just check the animals and stuff. It was tremendous. We have learned a lot through this thing. You know, we do know how to put a fair on, but this is a little bit different. So, we use some of the things and some of our knowledge of putting fairs on to deal with crowds and all to make this thing happen. And And we know we corrected our deficiencies as fast as we could as we went along. And we had over 40 families staying out there that came with their animals, didn't know where else to go, so they were in the RV area. And just, I mean, the biggest comment I heard from a lot of people, well, you finally got your fare.
Mm,
Yeah. So we've learned a lot. We know what we need to do moving forward. The output from the community has just been phenomenal. The business community, especially anybody that's involved with, agricultural community has really come up. I mean, the first place they go is the fairgrounds. That's what they're used to. I mean, from all the hay and grain companies, our local companies plus companies out of county send stuff up there to us. Shavings, kind of a little joke because we had to put shavings on the ground, the barn's full. And let me tell you, shavings is a commodity right now for a lot of the mills not being run. Shavings is a big commodity. And we've got shavings that last for about a year sitting on the fairgrounds right now. Like I said, we have such a great, tremendous volunteer force out there, more than I ever thought of. Some of the things that we had coming in, during this time that I hadn't thought of and had to correct was the people that just drove out there. We had people calling wanting to donate, but it was just the people that just showed up and dropped stuff off, sleeping bags, tents, all that type of stuff. Food for the volunteers. That's it. We've been trying to feed the volunteers, and it's just amazing the businesses that have come out there and dropped food off for all those volunteers. So we do know now how to work the resource for volunteers, and it's like I said, it's a little overwhelming. I apologize for being a little rummy here, but 3 o'clock in the morning every morning has been kind of getting to me finally, finding out I'm getting old. I'm proud of what we did out there. Proud of the fact that we served not just our county, but we've served 3 counties around us that we've had, coming to the fairgrounds. I feel that, we had our act together to begin with, and we're able to take care of those people and get them settled in. When you have to deal with animals, the key is that the quicker you can get the animals settled in, the less problem you're going to have. We have, it's just amazing, the community. I can't say enough. I know I keep repeating myself. But it's just the community out there has really come together. I had a gentleman come up to me and said, I've lived here for 10 years. I've never been to the fairgrounds. And he said, I had no idea. So, I mean, he came out there, someone told him about he came out to volunteer. And it's not a glamorous job. Mucking stalls is not a glamorous job, or washing buckets. Because I have to worry about with that many different animals with different areas, there's biosecurity that you have to worry about. And so we kept on that pretty good. My staff is just, the 3 of us have just, my staff has just come together without any thought about getting things done. They've done a hell of a job. And so, as we move forward, we know what we need, some of the changes we need to make out there. It's just, like I said, I've never in my life thought we'd have over 700 animals at the fairgrounds. It wasn't designed for that. It wasn't built for that, but it will work for that. And, kind of one comment was we needed more panels, didn't know where. So I had to go out to the briars, the old stuff. Fairgrounds is kind of like a junkyard, we don't throw anything away. And we dug all that stuff out and set them up. And you know what, we have not had one injury at all, just because of what we went through to make sure that we didn't have any problems. And, you know, I had other fairgrounds calling me throughout this whole thing. How did you check them in? How are you checking them out? And it was just simple. I said, just do what you do during fair. And it's, you know, we are fortunate in the fact that we can account for every animal that's coming to the fairgrounds and every animal that's left the fairgrounds. And I'm pretty proud of that fact, that we have that many animals there in that place. And you gotta also remember that those animals are a lot of these people's kids. They value them just like they did their own kids. So, you know, I've got one gentleman out there who had 13 alpacas. I learned a lot about alpacas that I didn't know. And let me tell you that he was probably the hardest volunteer worker because he was just appreciative. He came from Palm Beach area. He's out there today helping tear the pins down, get them stacked up right now. So it's just, like I said, it's been overwhelming in some respects, but we've made it. We went through it, and I'm very proud of what we've done. So, if you have any questions, Brian kind of stole the thunder.
I know. I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to.
No,
I feel like
I'm just kidding. But, you know, Yamhill County's, let me tell you right now, there's a gentleman from Beaver Creek that had 22 horses out there. And I tell you what, he told me yesterday, he said, if I could find a place here, I'd be moving here right away. And so let me tell you, Yamhill County, he was just said this, he had no idea this county would accept everybody in and just treat them the way they were treated. So just be proud of that fact. So if you have any questions, or
thank you, Gary.
want to know anything, call me. My second office is the picnic table behind the bar.
That's great. But we may have questions or expressions of gratitude, comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say, I've been out at the fairgrounds and talking to Gary and just looking into his bloodshot eyes and seeing everybody sitting at those picnic tables who were just, they didn't even question it. They were working. I think of that as our living room. That's Yamhill County's living room, and we were so welcoming. And I want to thank, just a couple of comments from people who, Sunday morning, I heard from people from Beaver Creek and Estacada, and this one man sitting at a picnic table in front of his tent, who came from Malala, I believe.
Well, yeah.
And he said to me, he's a big burly logger guy. And he said, I came here looking for a place to sleep, and I got so much more. He said at 2:30 in the morning, he said, Lacey and Kelly, they said, just what do you need? They handed me towels and laundry stuff and food and blankets, and there was not one need met. Another couple from out Beaver Creek, Estacada area said, we just had no idea that that every one of our needs was going to be met. And everyone has been, they said, no matter what time of the day or night, nobody was short, no one was impatient. And it was just really humbling to see. And then that man from Vancouver who came down every day,
Yep.
and he was there every single morning and just working hard and looking around at all the RVs and the people and it was a little city.
Mhm.
And so this is a community that's amazing. So when people want to criticize, I think that Yamhill County is just an amazing example. And thank you for your work.
Well, thank you. You know, some of these people that came out finally admitted to me that they showed there as kids.
Yeah.
40 years, 50 years ago. One gentleman said, I showed here 50 years ago as a kid. That's how I remembered it. Was there. So, you know, we're pretty, like I said, I am very proud of our staff, and our volunteers and stuff. It's just, you know, it's kind of humbling. It's more humbling when you have someone stand there crying, not know what to do, and you just, animal talk for me, you just take the bull by the horns to get it taken care of right then and there. You know, get them back on track so that they know where they're going to be at. And we have them, like I said, we have them from all over, Otis. So it's just, it's been amazing. And they're coming out there, you know, today, this morning, the gentleman from Beaver Creek that had the 22 horses out there. I mean, he came up and gave me a hug. He's coming back, this gentleman, he knew of us because he comes to the Pacific Overland auction area. That's how he knew that what was out there.
Mhm.
And that's why he came in there. And, he was the gentleman that the red zone was in his kitchen and his laundry room, and the safe zone was in his living room and bedroom. So it was, he's now able to go home. So, like I said, I didn't have time. I just kind of wrote some notes down. If you guys have any questions, feel free to call me or ask. We're still gonna, I've had people say, well, when do we have to be out? I said, whenever you think you need to be out,
Mhm.
we'll be here for you. So,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thank
Thank you
you.
for giving that
Hey,
assurance.
I just
I think
have a
that,
couple
Gary, I want to make sure that,
Couple comments for Gary first. I've known Gary longer than both of our ages put together, so Gary always.
how does that
has-
work?
don't tell
Even
stories.
since T-ball, Gary always has been a go-getter, but he has such a way with people and his staff, he's put that on their staff, they have such a good way with people, but they're not afraid to, like Gary said, take the bull by the horns and get something done. But I think, it's something I said even right after I was first elected, that we have an excellent fair board. I mean, we have a very excellent fair board. We have excellent staff. But I think this showed that our fairgrounds, it's not about a fair. It's a community gathering place. It's an event center. It's for things to happen. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think we would have been able to do what we do, because it just isn't a fairgrounds. I mean, that's the main purpose, to put on the fair. If you look at all the other events and everything we have, and we have to think Gary's at the heart of every one of these events that go on, like the overland auction. And if it wasn't for those, we wouldn't have income coming into the fairgrounds. So I think we just need to keep realizing that we have a valuable capital resource out there. And because what we've done with it, what Gary's done with it, it's allowed us to do the things we did, like during this fire. So I think just Gary, I can't personally, known you as long as I have, and we coached each other for years and years, but I can't say enough thank yous to you and your staff.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And Gary, I was on I guess it was a radio show, but I didn't hear it on the radio, with county commissioners from a couple other counties stretched down the coast. And to a person, they talked about, they used the word resilience to describe having their fairground, having it functioning and operating, and that it provides that level of resilience and a buffer against, I guess, the brittleness that we get with disasters. So, Vicki Berger, I think she's the vice chair of the state fair council or something like
State
that.
Fair Council.
Okay,
Yeah.
she also spoke about the great value of it, with the hopes that it would continue, it would shine new light on the value of it. So, yeah. So there's other people talking too. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you very
I
much.
will say we did have blog TV came out of Seattle.
Law TV.
Please don't hold anything against me when I say midnight. I mean, we're taking a city boy in Seattle and walking around pointing animals out.
This is
It's
a.
Horse.
it's one of those weaker moments when I should have said, why don't you come back later? But you know what? Sometimes, hindsight, you're just going, oh.
Christian, we should have come over and seen him at that point, I guess.
So, but anyway,
Stayed
the guy was interesting. And this is a guy that wanted to do a piece on something like this rather than a conflict.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to talk to him, but it was, at the same time, like, I watched it the other day for bits and pieces. And I thought, oh my God. So anyway.
Thank you,
Thank
Gary.
you.
I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Gary.
hearing directly
Thanks
from you.
very much.
All right, and that concludes this work session updates. Move on to item E, which is the consent agenda. We have none today, and it was really good to hear from them. Move on to item F, which is old business. And item F1 is consideration of approval of amendment number 1 to an agreement between Yamhill County and Dowell LLC, previously known as OBEC Consulting Engineers, which is Board Order 19-79, for consulting and engineering services, extending the completion date to March 1st, 2021 for bridge design and construction of the Stag Hollow Bridge on the Yamhill West Sider Trail. And commissioners, we moved this from last week to this week. And do you have any questions, Commissioner? We talked about this a little.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I think the technical term is kicking the can down the road.
I think I was struggling for the right phrase.
That wasn't good.
We're waiting for you because we really weren't sure how to proceed when we could count.
Yeah.
We could count. I could count the one, I think is what
Right.
it was technically.
Right.
Yes.
Well, since we've been kicking the can down the road, as Commissioner Starrett said, and I think we've had all the comments that I would make a recommendation that we approve Amendment 1 to the agreement between Yamhill County and Dow LLC, which was previously Quebec Consulting. That was our board order 19-79 for consulting and engineering services, extending the completion date to March 1, 2001 for bridge design and construction of the State Hall Bridge on the Yamhill Northwest side.
Thank you, Commissioner. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Records show Commissioners Olson and Kula voted the affirmative and Commissioner Starrett in the negative. All right, thank you, Commissioners. And I got it correct. Move on to item G, which is other business. And item G1 is consideration of the renewal of the Short Trail yearly maintenance and support contract in the amount of $35,166.72 for fiscal year 2020 through 2021. And Ken, would you like to add anything?
I don't think I have anything more to add than what Shane had provided in his memo. It's for maintenance for our short trail system. I thought.
Yeah. And as our resident IT expert, okay. Well, I would move approval then of item G1. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The records show unanimous approval of item G1. Item D2 is consideration of declaring tax lot R3219AD, a parcel of undeveloped real property acquired by the county through property tax foreclosure, as surplus property, and authorize the sale of this parcel to Dina Mink Coates and Jeff Coates, 700 East 5th Street, Newark, Oregon, for $3,001 plus fees and costs. And Christian, what would you like to add? You've given us the information.
I handed out some materials that show a picture of where the property is located. And just for the record, I'll clarify the tax lots are 3219AD 09499.
Yes, thank you for that.
This is a property that the county's had through foreclosure for a considerable amount of time. But some interest was expressed recently by some of the neighbors. It's kind of an odd driveway piece, kind of runs between several houses in an L shape in Newburgh. And once the interest was expressed, we followed our standard process and sent notices out to all the adjacent property owners to see if there was interest. We had interest from a couple of property owners, and so there was some bidding going on. And as you can see, as you can maybe surmise from the final price, the winning bid was $1 more than the previous bid. So that's sort of how that ended up.
Christian. Wow.
And they have communicated with each other. So we're hopeful that as this property runs between some neighbors, that they will be able to continue to work together to make sure that it appears to be historically used as an access driveway for several properties. So hope that can continue. But we're ready at this point to have the board declare it surplus, and then we'll move forward with the deed and transfer of this property to the Coates.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions? All right. Thank you, Christian.
It's just one more or less piece of property on
Right.
our.
Another odd one. Well, I would move approval of item G2. Is there further questions or comments?
Yeah.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the records show unanimous approval of item G2. Thank you, Christian. I look forward to seeing it again. Move on to item.
Before we get
Yes.
to, I just want to say that some counties actually have a whole department that is focused on foreclosures and these types of processes, which, as we know, can take years. So I just want to give a shout out to.
I would welcome the department. Thank you.
I was wondering
So
where this was
no,
going.
That seat.
What a
I just wanna say
generous
thank you.
offer. I think Todd would agree. That would
It's
be-
just it's a lot of work, and I appreciate county council, assistant, senior county council, and our paralegal, our legal assistant, Noelle, because this is it's just tedious, and
Yeah.
it goes on and on. So thank you for,
Well, and Noelle really deserves the credit too, because she does a lot of the legwork out front and communications and making sure that folks who are calling with questions are getting the information they need, and is a super resource as well. So yeah, there's a lot of these out there, and we're slowly working our way through them. But yeah, this is one more off the list.
thank you.
Yeah,
Great, thank you very much. All right, and before we move on to item G, which is public hearings, commissioners, do you want to take a break at all, or are you good?
Maybe we can take a five,
How about a 3?
3? Let's go
Which will
3.
bleed into 5 anyway.
3.
Okay, well, we will recess for 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure.
And we'll still be streaming for the video because
Good reminder.
we can't write that up, so.
Sorry, Catherine
Make it
and
fast.
Ken Friday, for keeping you here even longer.
It was a fascinating presentation to hear.
Yes, I was thinking that you would be excited to hear it. Thank you. I'm gonna read it's so, once I discovered that this was in the back, it's like, I don't need to write it up if it's right here. And there is another copy here somewhere too, but. I don't know where he would be finding conflict though. I said, I don't know where he'd be finding conflict, but he had to go look for animals instead.
Oh, I'll bet. I'll bet.
Serious. I get it today. I'm hoping so. I need it today. Yeah, and if they don't have another one, you can take this one. 8 years. I'm not sure if it's Saturday. What's that? We need another one anyway. So I'm hoping to have one to take on. And now I'm going to yeah, send them to my house. Well, I'm gonna figure that problem out.
All right, we will come back from our recess and move on to item H, which is public hearings. And item H1 is consideration of planning docket Z-02-20/SU-20/SDR-16-20, which is a request by Integrated Beverage Group LLC for a limited use overlay zone amendment, similar use determination, and site design review. The applicant is seeking to co-locate a distillery and related spirits tasting within the existing winery facilities. The applicant/owner is Integrated Beverage Group LLC. And with that, I will open up this hearing and begin by calling for abstentions by the Board of Commissioners. Okay, no abstentions. Do you have any site visits or ex parte contact that you need to declare? Okay, thank you. Well, then
I don't
will move-
remember.
Excuse me. Are there any objections by parties to the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners to hear this? I'm looking at the screens. I'm looking at Kathy because we're the only ones other than us. Okay, great. Then with that, I will turn it over to Ken Friday for reading the Razor Ribbit.
Yes, Oregon law requires that persons who attend a land use hearing be advised of certain rights and duties before the hearing begins. First, with regard to standards for approval, state law ORS 197.763 sub 5 requires that we list the applicable substantive criteria that must be met in order for the county to approve the application. And in this case, the application needs to satisfy sections 701, 904, 1007, 1101, 1206, and 1208 of the Yamhill County zoning ordinance. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the standards for approval. Second, the raise or waive it rule. Under Oregon law, any issue that might be raised in an appeal of the county's decision in this matter must be raised before the record of this hearing is closed. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Third, and this is directed to the applicant, under ORS 197.796, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval, again with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond to the issue, precludes any action for damages in circuit court.
Great, thank you very much, Ken. And then I would ask staff report. I'm
Yes.
guessing that you will be doing that too.
Yes, the subject parcel is 19.63 acres. The 2-acre area where the amendments and the distillery are proposed is zone RI, resource industrial. The remaining 17 acres is zone AF10, agricultural forestry, small holding. Property has 2 buildings currently used for the winery operations, which includes production and tasting. The remainder of the property is planted to a vineyard. The majority of the area surrounding this subject parcel is rural residential and zone VLDR 2.5 and AF10. To the south is a parcel that is zone HC highway commercial, and the city limits of Dundee are approximately a half mile to the southwest of the subject property. In 1991, an application for a plan amendment and zone change on a 2-acre portion of the subject parcel was approved through ordinance 530. This approval changed the comprehensive plan designation from very low density residential to industrial, and the zone change from AF10 to RI, as well as applying a limited use overlay zone, which limited the uses in the RI zone to a winery. The existing winery and tasting room are located in the RI zone portion of the property. The applicant is applying to amend the limited use overlay that was applied for in 1992 to use the existing winery structure to operate a distillery. Additionally, the application includes a similar use request as a distillery is not listed as a permitted or conditional use in the RI zone, and a site design review is in order to establish it. The Planning Commission reviewed this request and recommended approval of the application with a modification to condition number 1 of the staff report, so that production of distilled spirits also occurred on the property and not just tastings. After the Planning Commission hearing, the applicant discussed the condition with their clients and recommended the following amendment in their September 10th letter.
that the applicant will file a TTB permit application for a distilled spirits plant within 1 year from the date of the final land use decision and provide evidence of the filing to the planning departments. And I do want to mention, I actually am not the planner usually on this one. Stephanie had a childcare issue, so she's not here today. So bear with me if you have questions. I might take a little longer to look through the records.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
One question to clarify, in our packet, the condition that was changed at Planning Commission was from and or to and. But then you mentioned that one, which I believe was what the applicant requested.
Yeah, and so what our recommendation will be when we get to that stage, and this is what I anticipate it to be, that we would remove the last sentence that says the distillery may include production and or tastings and replace it with the proposed language from the applicant, which is the requirement to file the TTB permit for distilled spirits.
Okay, great. Which is substantively different, but we'll talk about that. Okay, I'm glad that you understand what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I will ask the applicant to present their case. And I believe we have them on the screen. So if you can come to your microphone and state your name and your address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Albridge. I'm getting the feedback, so let me try to turn down my volume.
We can hear you without the feedback, but whatever you need to do to make it work.
Hopefully that's a little bit better. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. My name is Elaine Albridge. I'm with Davis Street Tremaine and hearing on behalf of the applicant. Integrated Beverage Group. With me today is Olivier Jamon with PwC, as well as Alan Dodge, the COO with applicant. I'll be presenting on behalf of the applicant, but first I wanted to turn it over to Alan to talk a little bit about IBG and the proposals we have before you today.
Thanks, Elaine. First, I'd like to thank you all for allowing us to be here today. Before I begin, I'd also like to offer my thoughts and prayers to the first responders, support personnel, and all those affected by the fires in the county and throughout the state. There are a lot of amazing people putting themselves in harm's way to benefit and support of others without concern for their own safety. It's humbling, but also inspiring, and I appreciate hearing detail of some of those efforts during today's testimony. Makes me honored to be a business operating within this. So I'd like to share with you a brief overview of the company. Integrated Beverage Group, or IBG, is the parent company with Duck Pond Cellars, Stonewall Vineyards, and Ransom Spirits. IBG purchased Stonewall in 2015, Duck Pond in 2018, and Ransom Spirits 2020. The Duck Pond winery are outside when we acquired we continue to operate. All of these businesses have been operating in years, both before and after, and all continue to compete in the county. As part of IBG's business plan, we seek solo brand and a necessary approval to sell and serve and spirit at the Duck Pond Show. We believe the Duck Pond benefits from its great hospitality and public tourism and visibility from the fact land. We're looking to create a unique customers by providing wine and spirits, show them the type of things that we have.
Can I interrupt you for a moment, sir? Excuse me, sorry.
We're having trouble.
We're only hearing about every other word. So we're gonna see what we can do to get you a clear line. What we have done in the past is had you on, but muted yourself and then called in. So do you want to coordinate a phone number, or do you have a phone number?
Yeah,
Thanks for saying something, for sure.
yeah, if you want to recess.
Yeah, we're going to recess for a couple of minutes to get you guys connected with County Administrator.
Thank you.
Catherine, there's no worry that you're not going to be heard.
This is part of why I
Yeah.
declined the offer of joining the electronic.
Could you folks do me a favor, everybody who's on the Teams meeting, email Carrie a phone number, and what we'll do is we'll call from our conference phone and have you join via
I
telephone.
think so too.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
If you want to give Carrie a heads up, the emails are coming.
Thanks, Ken and Commissioner Starrett, for also starting to interrupt him. So I didn't feel as bad about interrupting him.
I could read his lips, but that isn't going to help anybody who's trying to follow this,
Yeah,
like online or
exactly.
something. But yeah. Do you know where he's joining from? Out of the area, right?
Probably. Maybe.
It's a universal problem, so
You do have a problem, universal problem.
Universal problem.
crazy. I just keep trying.
Christian's not here to give us soccer updates while
You got Todd here.
It's so rude and silent.
Yeah, I didn't know where it was coming from.
It's like when I unmute and mute people on those calls.
You have the power.
Well, I hate it when I'm trying to unmute somebody and then they manage to unmute themselves and then I accidentally mute them again. That's the one where I'm like, oh,
It's that sweet spot.
yes. You don't want to wait too long for them to
I
do
know.
it.
She's at her seat,
My
but she's
goodness.
been emailing back and forth with family, so. Now she's getting mail.
How many calls can we conference?
We can conference at least probably 5 or so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you don't need to do that. Well, I guess we should set up the chair and.
Oh, right.
The conference call chair. It's like having Elijah in the room.
I'll run across the street.
Let me see what Lolly's extension is.
Todd, the question is still pending. Can the fairgrounds accept financial donations?
yes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they have already, so that's the thing, it's funny. But the obvious answer is yes, they can accept it. It's just that, yeah, everybody needs to make their own deductible, whether decisions about whether something's deductible. But right. Yes. I assume that since Ken is not here, we should wait for Ken to return. Yeah, okay,
He went across the street, I think.
yeah. Apparently the smoke alarms at Public Works keep going off.
They're just burning it up out there.
Oh my gosh. You would stop welding under the smoke alarm, right? I think that we got an email from Ken 5 minutes ago.
Then I realized that we probably. So we're gonna call it on the conference call. Sorry for the delay.
It's okay, we're still on recess.
Hello. Hi. Noelle? Hi. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
509.
5 minutes.
Okay. Alan. Okay. It's gonna daylight it down. Did you drop a call or something?
Thanks, Carrie, for your help.
Perfect.
Let me try and get them all synced up before we start.
And thank you to all three of you for working on that.
Yeah, Carrie wasn't here yesterday to help me figure out a conference call, so Christian had to do it. Poor Christian.
Christian read it over
He had to show me how to do a conference.
I taught him how to do one the other day,
Somebody told me.
and I think I learned it from Kaylee. Sorry.
I am
Beth.
calling
No,
for
I was just
Oliver.
gonna say somebody else. I think Ken, didn't you get? Did
Christian showed me how to
Christian
do-
showed you
how to do
too.
my conference.
Oh,
Conference
sorry.
call.
Thank you.
I'm so proficient that the other day I inadvertently merged a call with my wife with Carrie Martin, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, no! I just want to hang up one." and answer
So you
the
did
other.
that on yourself? I haven't learned that yet.
Inadvertently, Yeah.
I'm just learning the office one.
First number for Oliver.
I gotta learn that one too.
Tandy.
Did it not work?
It
You
goes
have to
to-
dial 1.
Commissioner, we silenced your computer for you.
Okay, that's what it was.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, no.
Thank you for.
See,
silencing.
Actually, notice Casey said we.
Hi,
It
I'm
wasn't
calling
we.
for Oliver.
I knew it wasn't you.
Because you know I don't know how to. I wouldn't know how to.
No.
Casey, what I could say
Hi.
is I'm always be silent.
We'll just hold for a moment.
He's always silencing
Lincoln
me.
and
He
other
figured he'd
people.
silence you.
But he told me that in person.
Then he said we.
Did you like that?
The collective
I
we.
thought
I
so.
did like that.
I love it when you guys work together.
A majority of the Board of Commissioners has
Right.
has decided, oh, well, maybe one, and the other one didn't stop them.
That was funny.
Hi, this is Carolina calling from the Board of Commissioners meeting. We're just getting everybody on the phone right now. Can you hold? Thank you. Complete.
Another, I just saw, got a notice of another committee I never knew the governor had. It's called the Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee, CIAC.
For what? In
Doesn't say.
general stuff?
Well,
Hi, Elaine. It's Carolina from the Board of Commissioners office. Hi, we're just getting everybody on the line. We'll start shortly. Thank you. Oh,
we have a big agenda covering a bunch of stuff.
can you hear me?
I can.
Elaine?
Yes. Yes.
Oliver?
Nice. Well, if you're ready, Carolina, then I will bring us back from recess. Okay, please continue at wherever you want us to begin again.
Thank you. This is Elaine Albridge for the record. Sorry about that, and thanks for the technical accommodation. I think we're just going to hit restart and start over at the beginning, and I will turn it over to Alan to talk about the applicant's business.
Thanks, Elaine. My apologies for the technical difficulties there. What I wanted to start with is first thank you to all of you for allowing us to be here today. And before I begin my remarks, I wanted to make sure I offered my thoughts and prayers to the first responders, support personnel, and all those affected by the fires in the county and throughout the state. There are obviously a lot of amazing people putting themselves in harm's way for the benefit and support of others without any concern or regard for their own safety. And it's humbling, but also inspiring. And I really appreciated the opportunity to hear the detail of some of those efforts as I listened to the testimony that we heard just a little while ago today. It makes me honored, honestly, to be a business operating within the county. So with that, I'd just like to share a little bit of an overview with you of the company. Integrated Beverage Group, or IBG, as we're known, is the parent company to Duck Pond Cellars, Stonewolf Vineyards, and Ransom Spirits. IBG purchased Stonewolf in 2015, Duck Pond in 2018, and Ransom Spirits in 2020. The Duck Pond Winery was already on site, as you know, when we acquired the company, and we continue to operate the winery. All of these businesses have been operating in Yamhill County for many years both before and post-acquisition, and I'll continue to contribute to the economy of the county. As part of the IBP business plan, we seek to co-locate the brands and obtain the necessary approvals to both sell and serve ransom spirit products at the Duck Pond location. We believe the Duck Pond location benefits from its great proximity to Dundee as a hub of tourism, and also has very good visibility from the road to attract people in. We are looking to create a unique experience for our customers by providing both wine and spirits to show them the type of diverse offerings that we have to provide. We appreciate the county's work on helping us grow our business opportunities, and we are really excited about the opportunity to use our existing facilities for our new businesses. With that, I'll turn it back over to Elaine for further comment.
Thanks, Alan. Elaine Albrecht again for the record. We are appearing before you today because we need board approval in order to authorize the limited use overlay amendment that's a part of this consolidated application packet. We appeared before the Planning Commission, who reviewed and approved the distillery as a similar use on the property and approved the site design review, subject to the board's review and approval of the limited use overlay. So I provide that for a framework of why we're here before you today. In the staff report, staff recommended approval of the consolidated applications with conditions, and those conditions would have allowed the applicant to phase its operations as it moves over to the Duck Pond location. It would allow tasting to occur right away, and then over time, some production could be moved over to the site. We originally sought flexibility in that timeline, and also the flexibility to have tasting without necessarily having production occurring on site, given some of the opportunities that the applicant was looking for and how to kind of roll out their business plans and phase their overall transition. We thought this was an appropriate approach and supported by the RI code language, given that this zone is industrial in nature and not agricultural. The Planning Commission appeared to struggle with this a bit in its deliberation and made some comparisons to wineries in the AF10 zone. We presented additional arguments to the board in our September 10th letter that was presented in your board packet. We argue there that the RI code language supports staff's earlier recommendations and conditions, and that the language says in conjunction with, which is not intended to mean produced on site, and that the list of enumerated privileges associated with a winery, production, wholesale, and retail are a collective list of privileges and not an interdependent list of privileges that are dependent upon each other. If the board agrees with this argument and this interpretation and the staff's prior recommendations, then we would request that the board refer back to staff's original condition language and approve the application subject to that condition language. If the board, however, disagrees and finds itself more in line with the Planning Commission's discussion, then the applicant has proposed a modification to the Planning Commission's recommended condition to allow some time for the applicant to phase transitioning some production over to the Duck Pond location. That proposed language was on page 52 of the PDF board packet in our September 10th letter. I can talk through that in some specific detail if that's an option that the board would like to take. But otherwise, I'll save our time for any questions and rebuttal as necessary.
All right, commissioners, thank you, Councilor Albrecht and Alan.
Thank you.
Do you?
Questions right now.
Okay,
Just
I do have some.
why don't you go
I
ahead?
have some, but I'm happy to.
I had a question about the duration between the for production. So from the request for the extension to allow for production. Counselor
I think the question was referenced to.
Counselor Albrecht, no, I'm sorry, not you, Counselor. The one above
Woke
you.
me up, Mary.
Counselor Albrecht.
I believe the question is with regard to that your proposed condition and the timing gap, right?
The duration between the
Yeah.
request.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for reframing that. our proposed modification to the planning commission condition would be to allow the applicant 1 year to file with the TTB, which is the federal authority regulating spirit production. And so the commitment by the applicant would be to file its required distilled spirits plant permit application with the TTB within 1 year of the final land use approval. And it would provide evidence of its filing with the county planning department and then subsequently provide proof of the permit to the county planning department. This would allow the applicant to initiate the tasting room activities upon final approval of the decision, but then ensure that the applicant pursues the necessary federal approvals to produce on site and obtains them within about a 1 year time frame.
So just to follow up to that, if there is a denial, what will that do to your plans in terms of if there's no production taking place?
Good question. The existing distillery operation is already approved by the federal agency, so it holds an existing distilled spirits plant permit at another location, and so this would just be an application to add the duck pond location onto that existing permit. So the risk of denial is very low.
Thank you.
So Councilor Albrecht, I have a number of questions. The one that I guess is most concerning because it wasn't brought up by Friends of the Yamhill County, and I didn't see you address it, and I didn't see the Planning Commission address it. Was goal IF1, or how about Roman numeral 1, letter F, numeral 1, which is you have to demonstrate some kind of response to maintain a rate and pattern of economic growth sufficient to prevent recurring high levels of unemployment and underemployment in the county, balance the real property tax base of the various cities, and strengthen the local economic bases. And I'd just like to note that I'm pretty sure Ransom's current TTB is out in the West Valley. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So your proposal seems to go against what I would see as you're actually weakening, in my view, goal 1F1. So can you respond to that at all, or have you given any thought to that? I figured that this was something that Commissioner Olson might bring up, but I beat him to it.
I would bring up later.
Okay.
Sure,
I
I
just
can
I say
address that, and then Alan might be able to touch on it also. But if I'm understanding that the question, you're concerned that we would be weakening the economic contribution by transitioning production. I think in response to that, the idea would be that this would further enhance and hopefully the goal would be to grow the business at both locations. And so that production would remain at the existing operations and the existing operations would continue, but that this would be complementary to those existing operations and take advantage of the existing duck pond location in hopes of further bolstering the brand growth and the opportunity to retail directly to the consumer market. And so if anything, it does have the ability to add employment opportunities and revenue associated with the brand being produced at what would be 2 locations in the county.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to echo, this is Alan, what Elaine said. I mean, the idea would be that, there's a certain amount of production that occurs at the Sheridan, Oregon location. But Elaine's correct that, really this would allow us to expand further and continue to grow. And I guess as an example of that, when we first came into the duck pond location in 2018, I think the production there was probably somewhere around maybe 80,000 cases. And we've now grown that. We expect to produce well over 130, 140,000 cases this coming year. So it really is for us an opportunity to grow further.
Okay, and then my follow-up to that is, thank you. And we'll probably return to that, I'm guessing. But I think my concern that I'd love to have you kind of explain a little bit more is that I see a strong, in your application, a strong push to explain why it's important to make your spirits on the same location. And I also see a strong push as the wine, but I also see a strong push that you don't need to because you don't want to. I've seen that, you don't want to have production. You've said we just want to have tasting, if at all possible. But then you say, well, we have to have production in the same place as our winery. And I'm a little bit confused by it because I'm assuming that you're not making your spirits in the same location as your your wine production right now. Is that accurate?
I can take this one, Alan.
Okay.
So currently the production for Ransom Spirits is at a different location than the Duck Pond location. And so getting back to your comments about the application, I mean, as an applicant, we're always trying to seek the most flexibility, right? In order to be adaptable in the business plans and planning for transitioning over to a new location. During the Planning Commission hearing, we heard from the applicant's VP of wine production and distillery production, who talked about the benefits of co-locating a distillery operation near a wine operation as it relates to producing some of the Ransom's products. And so those are the products that Ransom would feature at the Duck Pond location and would likely transition that production of those specific products over to the Duck Pond location, given the co-location benefits associated with that. Alan, I don't know if you want to supplement that a little bit in talking specifically kind of about the grappa production and how that works, but that would be the rationale for what production would be shifted over to the Duck Pond location.
That's right, Elaine, and my apologies that Matt, our winemaker, was not able to attend today. He's honestly in the field today, working with grapes and smoke taint and all the things that come with some of the challenges. I would have loved to have him be able to testify directly to that. But to Elaine's point, part of what we were saying is, as it relates to things like grappa in particular, it's important that they're distilled immediately after fermentation, and you can't use some of the things such as sulfur dioxide that are allowed in winemaking, which could come across in the flavor profile. So transporting isn't ideal. So that is one of the things that we prefer to have a closer proximity to, and grappa is also made using the grape skins. And in our view, it would be we are the only people in Oregon that produce grappa. But it would be a benefit to us if we could do that in a location that's closer than, say, the 40-minute drive to Sheridan, where Ransom is currently located.
Okay, I think that answers some of my questions. Do you follow up?
Well, just a follow-up on grappa in terms of maybe projections as to, because I know there's a large market for it on the East Coast. Is there any projection in terms of what increased production or perhaps production at this facility would net out to? I don't mean dollar-wise, but just sort of anecdotally, as far as another product or another economic driver in addition to wines, because it's a distilled product. So you're looking at sort of the economic component of being able to distill or produce at another location.
Right. So look, if the question is, and if the specific question is immediate forecast, I mean, what I would say is, as you look across our entire portfolio, our target growth across all of our different varietals is around 20%. But I would say in this case, I'd certainly like to see that grow quicker. But it's certainly a challenge to express directly how much that will be. There's a lot of factors as we get in front of our distributors and what have you, but it is something that we would like to see growth on in the future, and we think this could be a good part of the positioning of that growth. So without giving direct numbers, it's certainly an area that we expect that we would see significant growth going forward for the company.
Thank you.
So my next question then is to clarify incidental sales through the winery. include, based upon the planning department's interpretation, would include spirits, correct? So you can sell now.
Currently, the applicant has the ability to sell a limited amount of distilled spirits through the winery tasting room as an incidental activity and retail sales associated with the winery's privileges, but that's capped at 25%.
Okay, great. And are you able to do that right now, or are you still awaiting OLCC approval?
Alan, I think we filed the OLCC permits in order to allow that privilege. They went through local endorsement already with Yamhill County. I'm not sure if those have been issued at this date.
July, right?
We have. We do have the ability to sell today.
Okay, so you got the
Great,
approval.
thank you.
And full disclosure, I think I approved the local endorsement. Okay. I think that takes care of my questions for now. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say before we move on to ask if there are others who want to, since I always forget that? Okay.
Not on our end, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And then we'll ask, see if there's anybody here who would like to speak in support of the application. Okay, if not, then we will move on to opponents. And I believe we have Catherine here, but if you can come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Is the microphone on?
It
Just hold it closer to you.
Yep.
Okay, that's, feels a little more like it's picking up. Again, my name is Catherine Jernstead. I want to thank Director Friday for the offer to participate in this meeting virtually, but I think my problems are even more sincere than this, in that I'm on the twisted copper wire from the old Prune Center private phone system out there. Part of the joys of country living. With regard to the fire, I want to echo the compliments and concerns for the responders. I enjoyed the presentation. I will say that I live at 8156 Northeast Mineral Springs Road, which is 2 ridges over, but less than 10 air miles from Bald Peak. And I sat in the smoke and ash plume of that fire without power, which means without water. So I count myself among the very fortunate that those tinder dry stubble fields didn't get ignited. But again, these are part of why we have our reoccurring concerns about development, non-farm development out in outside of our urban growth boundaries. To the specific issue before us, I have not received or had access to some of the follow-up activity from after the Planning Commission, so I haven't actually seen the proposed language. I do believe that tying the approval to on-site production is a step in the right direction. I would note that an application for a permit is not the same as actually constructing distillation equipment. And I think that the language needs to be tightened up some. Would offer as the alternative that they get the approval, and once it is done, then they can be released from the 25% incidental sale limitation they're currently operating under. I think it is important to, if we're going to argue similarity between wineries and distilleries, that we look in the resource industrial language which specifically states a winery including production and wholesale and retail sales of wine is subject to, and then it lists some restrictions that we are very familiar with. This differs from AF10, which does not include the link between sales and production. I think that the concern that Friends has, and I think some others as well, is that this will become strictly a on-site consumption and retail sales operation, also known as a bar. And that if they wish to assert under similar operation as allowed in the resource industrial one, that they really do need to more closely match what is asked of a winery in that situation. In my letter, I go on to talk about my impressions from the discussion before the Planning Commission. And this is never something that works when we've got an open application before us. But this is not the first case where we're seeing the impact of the evolution of the industry from the owner-operated, small-scale, early days to these investor-owned consolidations. That and the somewhat ambiguous language from one section to the other of the zoning codes on wineries came up again. It became a moot point because we aren't talking AF10 here. We are talking resource industrial. And I think this was a missed opportunity in our recent revisit of the zoning ordinances, which I'm not sure where those stand at this point in time. The process got pretty severely hijacked by other issues. And then the planning commissioners struggled some with, well, in that case, we allowed it. It was special, it was unique. But now we're seeing people who feel equally special, but the circumstances have become less unique. And they're struggling with, well, if we went that way in that decision, are we bound to keep pushing out the permitted activities? And they did, at least one of them said they really thought this one should go to the elected officials for a more comprehensive discussion. And again, with regard to this application, if the condition language is wordsmithed and tightened up to the point where it actually requires construction and operation of distillery activities on the site, not just an application, then I think we've risen to the level of a similar use. I would suggest that in order to keep this thing moving forward in a timely fashion, that they be conditioned to continue to operate in the 25% incidental threshold until that production is online. Again, appreciate your time and attention, and are there any questions?
I don't have anything for Catherine.
Thank you for that. I appreciated the points you made in your letter, especially about turning this into, a de facto bar. I know we've had issues like that in other applications that have been approved in the county. And so I appreciate those comments, and also that your recent recommendation about the 25% and production being held off until then. So thank you for we don't always agree, but thank you for your, just your input on these applications.
And I hope friends would have an opportunity to participate in a more neutral discussion where we're not talking about specific applications and individual cases.
Right. Along those lines, thank you, Commissioner. I wanted to ask you, get a little bit of your sense, because we've heard interpretations in the applicant's materials about what a winery entails, and the language in the RI. But from your perspective and friends' perspective, a winery, for example, is a production facility in addition to a place that sells and allows people to taste. And so your proposal is make a spirits production, or make spirits production be actual production in addition to that component of tasting and sales. Is that how I'm interpreting what you're saying?
Yes, that the resource industrial language never mentions a tasting room.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about events and sales.
Sales.
But that, and I would defer to the wine industry because I don't think they all define winery the same way.
Yeah.
Ideally, it would be production of ingredient on site, crushing, fermentation, bottling, and then sales and service. But especially with these small operators, they're like other agricultural entities, and there are custom bottlers and custom crush operations. We have custom baling of our grass straw. So those make sense, but there needs to be at least 2 out of 3 in order to be eligible for the privileges and advantages of essentially retail activities on farmland,
Right.
in my opinion.
Right. And as a reminder, this is zoned RI,
Right.
but I know what you mean. I just want to clarify for the record. Okay, thank you. And I look forward to having a conversation too about production, tasting, sales in the future too. Okay, any other questions for Catherine right now? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to rebuttal by the applicant. And it's great because I had one more question that I just remembered and likely will not need to be addressed by opposition. So you can, Elaine and Alan, rebuttal time.
Great, thank
So
you.
formal.
Elaine Albrecht again for the record. Chair, would you like to address your question first?
Yes, so my question was originally 700 square feet seems like an awful small space to do distillation of grappa and brandy and all the other components. But now that I understand that you're hoping to have production of grappa and brandy at that location and the other distilled spirits at your Sheridan, maintain it there, it makes more sense to me. And since I don't know how big your still is, I'm gonna go with your sense that you have enough room. I just didn't want this to be like a show, like here's our 700 square foot pretend distillation facility, so.
Right,
Not much of a question.
understood. And then I do think in addressing your earlier question too, it kind of ties to the question about the industrial development goal statement policy. There is the intention to continue to keep production at the existing facility. That facility has capacity, production can grow there. And in addition, this is to add a specialized production that complements the winery.
Yes, thank you.
At the Duck Pond location.
I feel a lot better about that.
Great, thank you. Well, just in closing, I appreciate Friend's comments, and I appreciate Catherine is a really good advocate and diligent in her advocacy, and I respect that, Catherine. And I do hear your concerns. I think this site is different in that it's an industrial zone. We're not talking about agricultural land, and that this is a unique site in that it has frontage along Highway 99, and it's a half a mile from the city of Dundee. It's very close to actually being in an urban area within the urban boundaries. It's not though, and so that's why we're here before you today seeking this amendment to the limited use overlay. As a business, we always will seek the most flexibility in the operations in order to allow for adaptability, particularly in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty. And so that's why you see some of the language and presentation of options in the application, trying to seek that flexibility as we move forward and plan for future growth opportunities. That said, we do recognize the concerns that were raised at the Planning Commission, and that's why we proposed a condition language in our supplemental filing to address that, to ensure that there is some hook for the county to confirm that production will be and subsequently is occurring at the facility within a specified amount of time. Our proposal for that was a year. And so that's what we had thought would be reasonable for the business. And looking ahead, we're open to discussion on that though. And we want to thank you for your consideration and your time. We're happy for any questions if you have any.
None for me.
Okay,
No,
great.
thank you.
And I want to know apologies. Thank you for your just being so willing to hear other sides, both to opposition and to applicant. I appreciate that. I did want to acknowledge that the order of operations is public agency reports before rebuttal. I was getting ahead of myself. And so do we have public agency reports?
There were no additional public agency reports for what was in the package.
Yes, okay.
There were none.
There were none, is what Ken Friday says.
All right, except the ones in the packet.
Except for the ones in the packet. Yes, and we've read those.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. With that, I will close the hearing and open it up to, I'm sorry, staff recommendation. I'm so
It's a
excited
lot
to do
going on.
deliberation, right?
There's a lot going on.
Yes,
And
thanks for your patience.
I do understand the concerns both by the Planning Commission and by friends. This was a little bit of a surprise because the Resource Industrial Zone is really a zone that historically has allowed more flexibility than the farm zone. And so it was a little bit of a surprise that this issue is, in both the Planning Commission's mind and in minds of friends. But I think the proposal to have a condition that requires them to have on-site production within a year is a reasonable one. And so we recommend modifying the condition number 1 to remove the last sentence. The distillery may include production and/or tastings, and add the conditions proposed by the applicant.
And I just want to clarify. Okay, thank you very much, Ken. All right, we move on to rebuttal. But what I wanted to clarify is that what Director Friday just said is what you said was different than what you were proposing. You said that they have on-site production within a year, but the proposed language is actually apply for.
You're correct.
Okay.
And yeah, that I do believe that is a hook to get them to have on-site production. And if you want to modify the language, that's fine. It might not be.
I think they may not be able to hear you.
They can't hear you.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
If I may address that, Chair.
Hold on. Ken Friday is going to clarify.
Yeah, what I was saying
thank
is, I believe the applicant, when they say that is a hook to have on-site production, certainly if you wish to have something, a stronger requirement, that's up to the board. We think with the zone that we're talking about, with the use that we're talking about, with the ability already to have 25% sales on site, all of those lead me to go along with the applicant's proposed condition. Obviously, the board can decide not to make modifications.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Right. And then deliberation. Thank you. Finally, we're there.
As I listened to the recommendations from both the applicant and some of the things that the friends said, now what we heard from Ken Friday, I think a year for the permit would be good, production would be good. Because what I want to ensure that if for some reason that they don't get the license, even though it's a transfer from the Sheridan location or addition to the Sheridan location, that I don't want for 5 or 6 years the tasting going on without actually having a distillery there and a distiller, the graph and the brandy and everything. So I would like to know what's in the conditions that says if within this period of year you don't start production, or with period of year that license you don't start, what happens? Do they lose their ability to do that? Do they lose their ability to have the tasting? There are other hard spirits, the ransom hard spirits.
Right.
Well, just that 20, up to that 25%.
Right. It would go back to, it would default to the 25%.
That's what I wanted to be, clear, would be fall back to the 25.
I think that's pretty well, I mean, that's pretty clear in the conditions about the 25%, unless I'm missing
I
something.
just wanted to verify that everybody else is understanding.
That's
Okay,
how I understand it.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because they can sell as though it's any other, it's as though it's a winery facility that has on-site sales. If this was approved, but that if they don't have production happening by a given time, then it goes back to the incidental sales.
Right.
Commissioner, do you have?
Just a couple of things came to mind. I was thinking about the Ewing Young distillery out on in our county on 240,
Right.
which is on the Oakhurst farm. And interestingly enough, that was a location where Ewing Young actually settled and wanted to do a distillery, and they ran him out of the state. And they said, "We're not doing distilled spirits here, pal. Hit the road." And he took his cattle and he left. So now he's sort of had his revenge, and there is a tasting there. There is no distillery there, but I think that in terms of those types of, and I believe that might be something down the line they'd like to do.
Right.
But I think when you look at the economic components of, for instance, distilled spirits being a whole nother economic driver, we never anticipated that wineries and wine production would be such a component in this county, and now we're seeing this other level. I look at that, and I also look at, again, the considerations that Ms. Jernstad brought up about saying what we're doing is just, creating another bar. But the location really does speak to the location, the existing facility, what's going on there. And to me, I look at that, and all of the activities associated with this distillery would be within existing buildings. So that's important for me. And again, there's that economic component and the fact that that we're not affecting that open space consideration that affects the character of the county.
Right. Okay, thank you. My thought about it is, I think, similar to yours. I just want to make it, I want to come back to the question of similar use. And I think that having some kind of, as Director Friday said, it some kind of hook in there to make sure that distillery means production the way that winery means production is important to me in order to approve it as a similar use. Right, like that's kind of our question. And so I come back to that. I feel like if we're going to approve it as a similar use, we should make sure that there's a hook in there for production. But beyond that, I think that the consolidated application looks really good.
Yeah, I do as well.
Okay. Then how do you, commissioners, how do you feel about the condition and the language of it? We approved at least the Jakewith Road cannabis processor with the pending that they couldn't start production until they had their OLCC approval. I'm wondering whether we can, how you feel about that with this particular setup.
They made an application, is that correct? Councilor Albrecht, the application was made and you're not anticipating any denial
I don't know if they've submitted the TTB.
for this one?
Okay.
No?
Councilor Albrecht says no.
Okay, well, it would have to be
Final land use decision.
Yeah, I think you're right.
contingent on that.
Yeah, I think that's a simple way of putting it.
Contingent on the approval.
Yeah.
I just had one comment about the fires. I know that, now that's uppermost in our minds, and And I was thinking about the recent fires that we've had, and none of them have been in conjunction with or as a result of any of the applications that have been approved for various on-site production and operations. I think about the fires, and one of them was, Chehala Mountain was being attributed to a campfire in a backyard that wasn't extinguished properly. Sometimes I look at the conditions that planning puts on these other operations and these applications, and they're so stringent, there almost appear to be more eyes on those types of operations because they have those conditions than there would be on the residential and on the farm applications of farm operations. So sometimes it sort of cuts both ways. We're watching so closely whether or not you're adhering to your those conditions that maybe we're actually doing a better service to have more restrictions on those, those
Yeah.
operations.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. Yeah.
I know it's deliberations. May I make an observation?
Commissioners, is
Yes,
this okay with you?
please.
Okay. Yes, please, Catherine.
One of the things that they did a heroic job saving the homes on Chehala Mountain because they were having to haul in water from Newburgh or Beaverton. And it's this development without the water infrastructure that creates an enormous burden on our responders and puts people at such risk. And, here's hoping we never have to deal with this situation again. But some of these establishments in other counties were caught up in the complication. They weren't the cause of it,
Mhm.
but they were certainly casualties of it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Commissioners, a simple way to do this would be to modify the condition, which condition one, there's only one, condition 1 of 1, as opposed to how many? Do you remember on the proposed for the bakery? It was like 40 or something. It was a lot.
Yeah.
But we'll come back to that one, it sounds like.
Yeah, we will.
The property is limited to a winery as authorized under Ordinance 530 and a distillery as a similar use on the 2-acre RI zoned portion of tax lot 3324-6800. The distillery may include production and tastings pending TTD approval. Because that way we know, and then they're still able to sell, and they're still able to do tastings through the incidental sales component, and they're still able to produce because they have their facility in Sheridan. So we're not limiting their ability to produce any of the things.
I wanted to get some feedback,
Yeah.
if that's appropriate from Councilor Albrecht.
I think
On
that
that-
with our, Councilor Albrecht?
Thank you for the opportunity. Can you restate the condition language the way you read it? It was hard to hear you.
Yes, it's the last sentence. And it's pretty
Mhm.
simple. It would be the distillery may include production and tastings pending TTB approval.
I think we're fine providing evidence of obtaining the TTB approval to demonstrate production. The issue with that is I don't think it accommodates the timeline that we were looking for with a year for transitioning into that facility. And so one option might be to say that the distillery may allow tasting and the applicant will provide evidence of its federal TTB approval to the county within X amount of time from the date of the final land use approval.
You already have
The reason why
able to. Sorry.
we had proposed to connect the condition language to filing of the TTB application rather than receipt of the TTB approval, given that the TTB timelines vary and you can't rely on how fast they may issue your application. And so to propose timelines that we knew we could control, we tied it to filing the application. Approval may take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, just depending on how busy they are.
Right, and I think that we're this language acknowledges that because it doesn't put any kind of timeline on it. It says that you'll provide proof of approval to the county. And I know that that's not what you want, but I just want to acknowledge that you're able to do tastings now.
Yeah, okay. It's up to the board's discretion on how to frame the condition. So no further comments. Thank you.
But how do you feel about that?
I think that's reasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable.
I feel a little bit like I'm a grumpy person, but
Yeah,
I was
no.
like, somebody has to propose a language. So
Well, and again, point well taken about you can make an application and we all know how
Yeah.
government agencies, glacial speed. And so it really shouldn't be something that they're penalized for.
yeah, right.
So I'm comfortable with that language. I
Okay.
don't have any problem.
Okay.
Because my thing is I want them to be able to, as soon as possible, when it allows, to be able to actually start pouring or the tasting and not have to wait for a process that we won't have any control over. I mean, they have control over when they turn it in.
They have control over that
How
part.
long
That's
it
right.
gets,
Right.
takes to get, they have no control.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Councilor Albrecht, and thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I would move then, unless there. Okay, I would move.
Can I ask
Oh,
a
yes.
question here? Sorry. Mr. Chair. It says the distillery may include production and tasting, and you were talking about pending. They already are allowed to have tastings, right, up to 25% anyway.
For their winery.
So
Right.
the distillery may include unlimited tastings once approval is obtained.
Right.
Is that what you're looking for?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Can you speak a little closer to your microphone? I think with your mask on, I think people are having a difficult time hearing you.
Well, I'm saying that the distillery, that it should, I think, read, and you could correct me if, or Ken Friday, the distillery may include unlimited tastings once, and I couldn't tell if it was PTB or TPB or whatever,
TTB.
TPB approval is received. Thank you.
Right, because you
You get
want to
that?
clarify, Councilor Sadler, you're wanting to clarify to make sure it's clear that
They can have tastings now.
the tastings now is under the winery
Yeah.
permit, and that this is under that this condition would be applied to the distillery as a similar use.
Just that it doesn't sound like it forecloses any tasting of distilled spirits now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Do we want that to be explicit to acknowledge that
Doesn't it say that though? I mean, doesn't it say that actually?
Where?
So you're saying it's not clear
I don't think it was clear from what
in
Commissioner
terms of
Cullen
the
said.
motion?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so,
don't think it was clear.
okay,
So another way to say this is to, in the condition, note that sales, limited sales are remain unallowable or remain possible under the winery permit. Because that's what it really is. It's under the
Right.
winery. It's not under this component.
Correct.
correct.
Well, maybe I'll try my hand at this then.
Maybe Counselor Sadler should
You want me to repeat it?
do the
You
motion.
can tell me if it's
Well, you
wrong.
said unlimited, but I guess I hesitate. I don't know why. It doesn't clarify that right now they're allowed. And I want to make sure that if we're making a motion and we're adding condition that both the applicant opposition and the general public knows that it's still allowed.
The tastings under the incidental sales related to the winery permit continue
Yeah.
until
So here's a possible one. The distillery may include production and tastings pending TTB approval. The tastings under the incidental sales component of their winery permit continue.
Bingo.
Good job, Catherine.
Okay. Well, I would then, thank you, Councilor Sadlo, and thank you.
Thank you.
I would move approval of docket Z-02-20/SU-20/SDR-16-20 with condition number 1 of 1 amended to read, the property is limited to a winery as authorized under ordinance 530 and a distillery as a similar use on the 2-acre RI zoned portion of tax lot 3324-6800. The distillery may include production and tastings pending TTB approval. The tastings under the incidental sales component of the winery permit may continue. So you're thinking, so I don't want to go to a call for the vote yet.
No, I'm just,
Oh, no, I was looking at this guy right
It
here.
will continue, but I want to make sure we say it continues until the distillery's built, and then it doesn't fall under that 25% anymore, because it would fall under its own. So,
I think the applicant has a question.
go
Yes,
ahead.
Councilor Albrecht, please.
Thank you. For the record, Elaine Albridge. I think at this point, we just withdraw our recommendation and would suggest that the board adopt the planning commission condition as drafted. The winery privilege already allows for the 25%, and that's under a separate authorization. So commingling it with this just makes it honestly more problematic. So we would respectfully request that you refer back then to the planning commission condition.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I ask for input from our planning director on this recommendation and our discussion?
I'm certainly happy to entertain that
Okay.
as well.
Mr. Friday?
And Director, can you come up just in case that they need to hear you?
And specifically, if you could respond to Councilor Albrecht's request in light of what we've been discussing.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. If I'm understanding the request correctly, that's, so it would just, would it keep the language, the distillery may include production and or tastings? Is that my
I think
understanding?
it's the and,
Yeah,
because and is what the commission changed it to.
Correct.
gotcha, okay.
I think Councilor Albrecht wants to make sure that the winery's rights and privileges don't get mingled.
Right.
Yeah. You know, to me, it's already allowed, and it is allowed under a limited basis. I don't have any objection to not having the language that they had proposed about submitting. So I don't have any objection to what she has proposed, if
Okay.
that's.
Okay.
Did you get enough?
I did. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm fine with the Councilor Albrecht's request to go back to the default.
Sure.
I'm curious, what is the default?
Yeah, so the what the planning commission chose to do was impose this condition. The property is limited to a winery as authorized under Ordinance 530 and a distillery as a similar use on the 2-acre RI zoned portion of tax lot 3324-6800. The distillery may include production and tastings. That's it.
And they can't have the distillery until they get the federal approval, so.
That's not what he read.
Right, so I think the concern, I wonder if the concern is the distillery, it's not explicit that the distillery has to be federally approved.
Well, of course it does.
But I think that's, I mean, you can't have a distillery unless it's federally approved.
Right, compliance with law is an unstated condition in every approval.
Sometimes it's a stated condition too.
And sometimes it's stated.
Sometimes
And
it is.
often I
We're gonna-
think, oh, come on.
It is stated in the site design later on, I believe. if I remember right.
And that pretty much goes without saying, I would imagine with any of the applications that are approved,
Right.
especially when you're dealing with the revenuers.
But there's nothing giving a timeline for on-site production. That's gone.
That's
No,
correct. There would be
it's
no
not.
timeline.
But
Yeah.
they can't.
The timeline was, and I want to, the timeline was just a component of the applicant's own time. So this says you have to have production. I mean, essentially, it says you have to have production if you're going to have tastings.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is
Beyond the 25%.
Is that how council interprets it?
Is that
Counselor-
a question for the applicant?
Councilor Albrecht, I think there was a question about, are you interpreting the distillery may include production and tastings to mean that you have to have production?
Yeah, yes. The way we would read the planning commission condition language is that the distillery may include tastings and production. The tasting can't be unlimited until there's production on site.
Right.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's super helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, then
No, I'm just waiting for you.
Then I amend my motion. I move that we approve docket Z-02-20/SU-20/SDR-16-20 as recommended by the Planning Commission. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item H1, G1. G1.
With findings to come back.
And findings, we will have findings Ken Friday or outside though.
With findings to come back in 2 weeks.
Do we have 2 weeks? We do?
That's 2 weeks.
Okay, and findings will come back in 2 weeks
Yes.
for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
We just gave you some more work.
I'm not.
All right, we will move on to.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you
Counselor.
very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Friday.
Thank you.
Move on to announcements and commissioners.
I have quite a few, given the late date, late time, something we can't wait.
Okay.
I just want to say real quick, I just want to point out that, that the city of Willamina did send a letter to the forestry board and the state forester concerned about a reduction in 25 to 35% of timber harvest. And in light of what a lot of commissioners, and I know that in this county, we have typically had concerns about forest management, which contributes to, has been contributing to forest fires without getting too political, to call out that the city of Willamina really has taken a beating over the years in this reduction. And this is certainly the fact that the forestry department has been underfunded by up to $136 million. I think we need to really push for better forest management and funding of the forestry department.
Yes, thank you for that reminder because it slips down in my thing and so I need to read it.
A lot going on.
Yeah, no, just, going back what Commissioner Sterrett says, is that's one of the issues that will go into discussion next week and during our AOCC, the Oregon Timber Counties meeting, because there's a lot of the smaller counties and cities within those counties especially that are getting clobbered because a lot of their timber harvest and timber management has been taken away and they can't get in. They have the resources to harvest, but they can't get in there to harvest them, so.
I'll send you this.
Okay, would you please?
Yes.
And then I'll
Yes,
send
it came
that-
through our
I'll bring
emails
that-
sometime.
I'll send that on.
Or just
I'll
a,
send it on to the-
okay. Yeah, thanks.
And then I had got a question from folks about whether we might be willing to move back to allowing in-person public comment since we've been allowing comment for land use decisions. But we can also talk about that next week. I'm happy to
That'd be great to talk about. Yeah.
bring it up. Yeah, want to make sure that if we're allowing it, that we should allow it. But I realized you brought up the Willamina letter, but
Just YCAP, that
Yeah.
the sheltering project was submitted to EDA. We should be hearing the YCAP sheltering project, we should be hearing any time now, I would
Okay.
think.
great. I know that they submitted a grant request to the YCCO, and they that was denied. So Alexandra asked us to consider contributing from the CRF dollars as well.
Correct.
So that's something that I'd like us to talk about next week if we can.
One thing I will bring up real quickly, if you haven't seen the email that Eric Anderson from Sedcor put out a notification yesterday that Sedcor in the Tri-County area was awarded a $469,000 innovative grant, which they like, the USDA liked what we've done with our agriculture and making it kind of work with technology. So they're going to take a program, it's going to be called Willamette Valley Ag, and it actually merges money for entrepreneurs and farmers to merge technology with agriculture to improve the agricultural yield. So that was almost $500,000. So they're going to be coming up with a program for that, and the link should be available probably in about a month.
I hope they're including extension in that.
I don't know what's on, I haven't seen the grant
Okay.
itself, but
Yeah.
there's a lot in there.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And were you able to have your Wednesday meeting? Did you have your Wednesday meeting with Leah Horner?
I'm sorry.
Did you have your Wednesday meeting with Leah Horner?
No, she canceled.
Okay,
Yes,
not a surprise.
totally understandable.
When
Yes.
she found out you were going to attend.
When
didn't.
she said,
Oh
yeah,
my
we're not going
gosh.
to do that.
Okay,
meeting."
Counselor Sadlow, do you have anything? Announcements? Ken Friday. I'm sorry, Ken Heffer. Thank you for so quickly looking.
I was looking to see if Ken was still here.
Yes, no, that's actually Carrie behind you. I just want to
Okay.
clarify.
Yeah, so the other Ken, no, I don't have anything.
Okay, great, Carolina. All right, with that, I will close this meeting, Yamaha County Board of Commissioners. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Oh my gosh. And we don't have an executive session.
Casey is getting